This is the Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo.
Hello and welcome to the latest Blood Red podcast from the Liverpool Echo. I'm Joe Rimmer, your host, and I'm joined by three slightly bemused looking gentlemen to discuss what has been a very strange few days for Liverpool. We should be building up to the Merseyside derby. We're not. That's been called off along with all the other Premier League games and in fact all the professional football in the UK until April 4th. Paul Gorst, you're alongside me, our full-time Liverpool reporter, both home and away, but not going home and away at the moment. How are we, Paul?
Yeah, slightly down the dumps. We're facing up now to a period of no football, and it's what do we talk about, what do we write about, how do we live, how do we get through day to day? We shall find out. It's going to be a really surreal few weeks, I'd suggest, at Echo HQ.
Yeah, it's not like we've dealt with days where there's been no football before.
Yeah, I mean it's an international break without international football, and we don't like them to begin with, do we? Don't like them at the best of times. Yeah. We haven't even got the topics of Liverpool players playing for the countries to have a little stab at, so we'll see where we go.
Hello, to my left is Matt Addison. Matt, you well? No coughs, no tight chest, no temperatures?
Not yet anyway. Hopefully that stays the case, but yeah, it feels like such a long time since there was any football going on, and it's really not been that long at all, has it? No.
And one man who's not in self-isolation is Dan Kay. How are we, Dan?
Isolation.
Well, a bit fed up like everybody else, and the uncertainty, not just regarding football but life in general, I think has got a few people, everyone feeling a little bit scattered at the minute. But what can you do but make the best of it, and that's what we'll do.
Well, I'll stick with you, Dan, because I think you hit the nail on the head there. I think of everything that's going on at the moment, that's the big word. It's the uncertainty. It's not knowing. We talk about April 4th, but I think most of us here would agree that...
hugely unlikely, doesn't it?
It does seem unlikely that football will return. Dan, is that the biggest problem, just the unknown at the moment?
I think the biggest problem, in a general sense, is the unknown regarding people's lives and health. And I think it's important to make the point that as much as we all love football and it's a major part of our personal and professional lives, people's health and well-being is by a mile the most important thing. And I think that's what's concerning most people, whether it comes to elderly relatives or friends or family with underlying health conditions that might be in big trouble should they get this virus. And obviously, we hope for everybody's sake that everyone stays as well as they can. But obviously, this is a football podcast, so we have to talk about football. And I think, in both senses, I think once we know where we are, and you'd like to think within the next couple of days, we'll at least have some inkling as to how the next few days and weeks will play out. At least you're then able to kind of start preparing and planning and getting your head around it. At the moment, as you say, it's the uncertainty that I think whenever you're kind of struggling a little bit in life, I always kind of think one of the main things to do is identify the problem. And at the minute, because we haven't fully identified it, rumour and hearsay and people saying this and other people saying that, nobody really knows where they stand at the minute. And you just got to hope and pray that hopefully in the coming days there will be a little bit more clarity given by the government, the medical authorities, the powers that be, and we could all start to kind of try and get our heads around it a bit more.
Well, Gorst, you wrote a story on Saturday making clear what's going on at Melwood at the moment. Obviously, Melwood closed down on Friday. What more can you tell us about what Liverpool are doing, both at Melwood and at an academy level, to combat or at least avoid the spread of this virus? Yeah,
well, we actually got sent an email around on Friday morning. Originally during the week saying Jurgen Klopp's press conference is going to be at Anfield instead of Melwood, as they try to basically keep Melwood free of any kind of spread or anything. And then with the email on the Friday saying Jurgen Klopp's press conference was going to be cancelled, I think that came quite early on as well. It was around about 8 o'clock in the morning, so I think we kind of had an inkling that something was afoot. And then Phil Kirkbride, our Everton correspondent, he wrote a story that a member of the Everton playing staff has been shown signs consistent with coronavirus, so they were asked to stay away from Finch Farm. And then you basically knew that the writing was on the wall, and the Liverpool squad knew that as well. So you speak to one or two people, and I was told that the atmosphere was calm, no sense of panic with the fact that Liverpool are not going to have any football to play over the next few weeks at the very least. It was going to be the last training session at Melwood until possibly next week at the earliest. But there was no sense of panic. It was all about staying professional, keeping fit, away from the training ground, adhering to the personal programmes that they've all been given, and basically professionalism was the buzzword. So they went on the merry way on Friday after that final training session, and now they're all training at home in their own gyms or wherever it may be, and just trying to stay as fit as they can for when it finally does return, if that's all it does for this season.
Matt, it seems that at a time when we're given very little guidance from the government and perhaps the football authorities, the football clubs themselves have made quite swift and decisive action to try and get things sorted.
Yeah, I mean, as you say, with the government and the authorities, it's changed very quickly of what their advice and what they were thinking was going to happen. It took Mikel Arteta testing positive for them to change their mind on this weekend's matches and things like that. So there's been a complete lack of clarity at times. But yeah, it certainly seems that Liverpool and the rest of the football clubs have sort of said, well, let's just go with the safest possible measure, get yourselves home, don't come into training or anything like that, and self-isolate and hopefully, fingers crossed, that can contain it as much as possible. But of course it's about wider society as well as football, and it's not in terms of, you know, when football returns and that sort of thing, it's not as much about the players as everyone else, and do we have fans, do we play with empty stadiums, things like that. So still, even though more clarity is sort of coming day by day, and we expect more to come this week, there's still a long way to go before the picture really becomes clear and things start to clarify as and when this season will resume, which we have to hope and assume that it will.
Okay, we'll touch on various other bits of news later on, but to begin with, Gorsty, there's been so many. I was in all weekend, so were you. It was about trying to pick and find different bits of stories, but there's been plenty of hot takes on what should happen next. You know, a lot of people saying void the season, other people saying play it out, other people having different theories. And I mean, two of the ones that have really hit home have been Karen Brady and then Richard Keys today. They both seem to be a little bit of an agenda from each of them. Do you think it's fair to say?
Oh, unquestionably, and Karen Brady as executive vice chair of West Ham, languishing 16th on goal difference only. It's no shock to her that she wants the league to be null and void. Start afresh, cancel it all, write it all off. 7 months of hard work for so many players and teams, just scrap it all and begin afresh. Self-interest coming right to the fore there, no question about it. The Premier League have got this break now, haven't they, until April the 4th at the very earliest, as we say. So they don't have to make any knee-jerk decisions now. They bought themselves a period of time to see what develops, see how the rest of the planet, you know, continues throughout the spread of this virus. So no decision needs to be made yet, but you know, I think quite a lot of people saw Brady's comments for what they were. She was only interested in West Ham's preservation in the Premier League, should we say, to keep that money rolling in on what has been a disappointing season for them. Chris Sutton argued two very contrasting points, didn't he? One was in the Daily Mail, one was in the Scottish Daily Record. On one hand, he wanted the league to be finished in Scotland and award Celtic the title, but he wanted the Premier League not to be, you know, it essentially benefited three of his former clubs, so Aston Villa, Norwich and Celtic, but they were two completely different. I
thought it was funny that he tweeted those two he tweeted his two columns on the same day with wildly opposite points.
It was strange because he was literally arguing for two different things. One in Scottish football and one in English football. So so many people are just coming out with what they think should happen, but nothing needs to be done or acted upon right now. It's they've got a few weeks, as I say, to come up with some sort of agreeable plan, and hopefully on Thursday we'll have a bit more clarity over the long-term future of this season. But for now, we'll just have to wait and see. This
talk, Dan, of voiding the season, I just don't get it, because if things do resume on April 4th, which, all right, we admit is probably unlikely, but if it does, then you would imagine that they would be able to play the season out. All right, we'll finish late, but not that late.
Yeah, I mean, if this had all happened, say, in September, October, like, not that I remember it, but like when the Second World War happened in 1939.
You don't remember?
No.
Just a wee nipper.
Yeah, I've heard, yeah. Cheeky buggers. They'd only played 4 or 5 games, and it made entire sense to just scrap it from the start. But yeah, when, as Gorsty said, 7 months worth of football. I did see some graphic that kind of like worked it out that they played just over 75%, so just over 3/4 of the season we're talking 9 league games. Obviously, there's some European matches for some clubs to factor into that as well. Obviously, we've got an agenda as Liverpool supporters who are on are with us being on the cusp of a first league title in 30 years. Obviously, we'd be devastated to see that happen. But it's not just about us. There's an awful lot of teams who put blood, sweat and tears into this season. The likes of Sheffield United and Wolves, who are on the have a great chance of qualifying for Europe, possibly the Champions League. Clubs in all divisions that have been battling promotion and relegation. You can't put this much into a season and then just expect it all to be scratched out. Now, of course, we're living in unprecedented times. No one knows how this is going to pan out. I did actually quite like the Everton manager Carlo Ancelotti's take on it over the weekend. At one point, I think he said something like, "It feels almost." I think he said something like, "It almost irritates me to be talking about football at a time like this." And I do think, as Gorst said, at the minute we don't have to make a decision on it. Get the important things sorted, i.e., people's health, and then we can start to factor how the other kind of elements of life and society will fit in around that. One thing that may aid the situation and kind of help the powers that be realise that they have the ability to think outside the box and come up with some creative solutions is, of course, in 2 years' time, there's a Winter World Cup. So there was already going to be a change to how seasons were structured. And, to underline again, it's too early to start coming out with definitive plans now. But I think it's worth remembering that kind of, football seasons don't have to last from August to May just because they always have done. It's 2022. People can and will need to be very flexible in how they go about approaching this. But yeah, ultimately, those who've been banging the drum for everything to be, for everything to be wiped out are the likes of Karen Brady, who obviously has her own agenda to bear, or the likes of Richard Keys, who's just desperate for a bit of attention. The former disgraced Sky Sports presenter who's now stuck out in the Middle East, desperate for some kind of relevance and to make a quick headline, and he's been able to do that today. So, good luck to him.
Well, Matt, the decision to null and void. I mean, we can all talk about. We can say, look, you can't have a definitive answer now until we find out more about what's going on with the disease, what's going on with the football that comes after that. But the actual calls are null and voided. That seems to be the one thing to me that there's just no need to do, because whatever happens, surely you would look at next season and you would look to play with next season before you would say cancel this one, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, on every level, as you say, it makes absolutely no sense. I think financially it wouldn't make sense because we've played 28, 29 games and that would make no sense at all. Legally as well, I mean, Liverpool is probably the easiest of the problems to sort out in terms of the title. You think of Sheffield United, as Dan said, in terms of the European places, and even more so the relegation and promotion. How on earth would you go about sorting that out in a fair way? And I know you've looked at the model in Chile of what they did, and perhaps that's something that the Premier League could look at. But first and foremost, I think for everyone, the number one priority is just to finish the season, reassess where we're at then. And as Dan says, the Premier League calendar is going to be messed about with in the next couple of years anyway. It's really not that difficult to work out that there is a solution, and anybody who thinks otherwise is probably got an underlying agenda.
Well, that's it, what you say about Leeds and West Brom, for example, and the other teams in divisions below that are all trying to get promoted. I mean, they would tie up the Premier League or the football authorities in so many legal challenges, because for them it's worth not just the money, the TV money that you get for getting to the Premier League, but they would argue we could stay up and this could keep this club going for 20, 30 years. I don't, if Leeds don't go up the season, for example, and then they don't go up the season after, it could just change the course of the history for them, couldn't it?
100%. And as Matt says, Liverpool's situation would be the least of the Premier League glories. Try telling Leeds United, with their supporter base, one of the most fiercely passionate fan bases in the country, one of the biggest fan bases in the country, that we're sorry you've done so well this season, but you're not going up. Leeds would be hand on the Premier League with all kinds of litigation, you would imagine. West Brom would do the same. You only look at Sheffield United and West Ham in 2007, was it, with all that Carlos Tevez stuff, and that was just a simple case of playing a player whose registration was in question, and there was so much legal wranglings over that. So a decision to null and void the Premier League would just be the absolute worst case scenario for everyone. how they come around and get around sorting the season is down to them, and there are a few options on the table, but surely just cancelling it and forgetting about it is the last thing that they can do.
I must say, Dan, I think it's quite distasteful that the likes of Brady and Keys and anyone really, if you're not a different fan, saying you should null and void the season. Well, it's just...
It is.
It's unfair.
It is. It's also entirely predictable.
Yeah, that's true.
Because it's very, very clear where the motive behind this comes. And I think it's important to say probably there's a lot of West Ham fans who've got very little time for the ownership of their club, and I don't think there's probably plenty of them that wouldn't feel too easy about basically just getting off the hook on a technicality like this. I think another element to this to mention as well is also broadcasters and sponsors that have paid significant amounts of money for, to have 3/4 of this season play out. And obviously there's a lot of different narratives within and around the season, championships, Champions League places, relegation, cup runs and so on. And for that all to just be wiped, it may well be that they would have something to say, and their lawyers might have something to say afterwards. At the end of the day, money talks, and I've felt from the start that while I always expected certain figures within the game to bang the drum, and obviously Liverpool's rivals to kind of bait us and banter, much though I loathe that word, on social media about that, I've never really felt there was any real credibility or likelihood of that possibility coming to pass, just because, as Gorsty said, the likely litigation that would potentially ensue from something like that would be long-running and eye-wateringly expensive.
Okay, well, look, let's move on from coronavirus and the talk around it, because
I think it's,
and I think it's fair to say, isn't it, that it's just all speculation, and we can sit here and speculate, but I think it's fair to say that we don't know any more than anyone else, because we're all in the dark about this. So it'll be interesting to see how it develops in the coming days. UEFA have a meeting tomorrow, Tuesday, and the Premier League meet again on Thursday. So I think by the end of the week we will get a bit more clarity and perhaps find out what's going forward. Another little bit of news today, Gorsty. Liverpool have missed out on, is it Glenn Driscoll?
Gary O'Driscoll, yeah.
Arsenal's club doctor. They were trying to replace Andy Massey. Give us an update on that and what Liverpool's medical department looks like in the interim. Yeah,
so Andy Massey was the head of medical services, wasn't he? And he joined FIFA at the beginning of the month to basically take over as director of their medical department. So Liverpool have known about this for, where are we now, March? So at least 3 months. So they've been in the hunt for a new head of medical services. Arsenal's Gary O'Driscoll, you throw me off there. He was the one who... Who's Glenn Driscoll? Is there a Glenn Driscoll? Have I made that up?
Sean O'Driscoll, wasn't he?
Sean O'Driscoll.
Number 2 for a bit?
Yeah,
and didn't
for about 5 minutes.
Didn't Rodgers have another Driscoll? I'm sure he did. Anyway, I digress.
Yeah, so O'Driscoll was the one who kind of been earmarked and headhunted, if you like, and looked like he was going to be joining. Arsenal was so resigned to losing him, they actually advertised for his job on their website back in January. And he's had a late change of heart for whatever reason, personal circumstances, it was reported as. So Liverpool are still in the hunt for Massey's replacement. So as it stands, Jim Moxon, who was the academy doctor, he's been with the club since 2016. Previously worked with the aquatic team at the London Olympics and Sheffield United and Sheffield Wednesday. He's just carrying on as the club's doctor in the interim period, which you'd imagine at the moment is probably a busy job, isn't it, with everything that's going on. So yeah, he's in place, and Liverpool's search will go on for a new head of medical services, but I think they've got more pressing concerns just now. Definitely. Okay, final little segment then, as we have little else to talk about. A couple of very good honest days this weekend, which we can milk for all they're worth. On Saturday, it was 11 years. 11 years, it's been that long since Liverpool beat Manchester United 4-1 at Old Trafford.
Oh, yes. What a great day.
Rafa was cracking up, wasn't he, Dan?
He was. That's what they were all singing on the back of the a couple of months before his famous facts outburst before Liverpool's press conference ahead of a game with Stoke. And the lead Liverpool had at the top of the Premier League kind of withered away, and then we all kind of trooped up down the East Lancs Road. You were in the way end that day? Say again? You were in the I was in the away end, yeah. And it was very much a feeling that I think we'd had maybe a 6 or 7 point lead, but United had kind of, even though Liverpool only lost 2 games that season, United had stretched clear a little bit, and it was basically last chance saloon. I think if Liverpool had lost that game, it was all over. Cristiano Ronaldo gave United the lead from the penalty spot midway through the first half. I think we all thought, blimey, here we go again. But Liverpool resplendent in one of their finest ever away kits, I would suggest. That all grey. Love that kit. Came roaring back. Nemanja Vidic's nemesis, Fernando Torres, as he became, robbed him and scored a brilliant equaliser in front of the away end. Steven Gerrard put us in front from the penalty spot. And in the second half, Liverpool kind of weathered the storm. Vidic got, I think, was the second of 4 red cards against Liverpool.
Was it 4, yeah, that many?
It was either 3 or 4, yeah. I think it was 3 on the bounce. And then in Dossane a week, only a couple of days after having put the coup de grace on a 4-0 victory over Real Madrid in the Champions League the week before, he did exactly the same by lobbing at Edwin van der Sar in the United goal, and it was a very, very memorable 4-1 win and the start of a really exhilarating few weeks as a Liverpool fan, because I think the following week we beat Villa and they lost at Fulham. And then it flipped round the other week. I think Grand National weekend, Yossi Benayoun's very, very late goal gave us a win at Fulham. And United were 2-1 at home to Aston Villa with a couple of minutes to go, and then Federico Makeda, who never did anything before, and I think he scored the winner at Sunderland the week after, but never did anything after, came to their rescue when we thought our curse for a league title, well, we knew our curse for a league title was going to continue into what would become a third decade.
I reckon that 4-0 Real Madrid, 4-1 Man United was possibly my favourite week in terms of, if you take out trophy wins, but my favourite week.
Hard to top.
Yeah, it was a hell of a week.
One was the Tuesday night, or was it the Wednesday night? And then the
Wednesday, and then
the United game was the early kick-off Saturday, wasn't it?
Yeah, I remember that, yeah. How old are you, Matt?
I would have been 11, I think, at that time. But yeah, I remember it well, though. It was a fantastic week, as you say.
I was only 15.
And the
51, Matt?
Outside.
No, it was a hell of a week. Strange season, that, Gorsty, because I always think there's been a little bit of there was always a little bit of a narrative that Rafa messed it up, but as Dan said, they lost 2 games, and United always had games in hand because they went and played in, I think, the Club World Cup, didn't they? So
and a great side, Tevez, Rooney, Ronaldo.
One of their best, actually.
Much more strength and depth than Liverpool ever had. And you know, it was a very good season. It was just pesky draws. Yeah,
Liverpool should never have sold Robbie Keane.
Even the maddest sale.
And didn't replace him. It was one thing to sell him, but to not replace him.
Just got rid of him and just thought, we'll just muddle on. And
with Elzar coming off the bench.
I think that was the first sign. I mean, there must have been others, but I remember, certainly in terms of transfers, the first sign that Hicks and Gillette were not all
on the same page.
Where they were cracked up to be. You
think of all the draws that Liverpool had that season. If Robbie Keane was coming off the bench in a couple of them for 25 minutes, half an hour, you have to think at some point a couple of those draws would have became wins. But
a couple
beat United home and away that year, frustrating.
Yeah. I remember they drew 0-0 and 0-0 with Fulham and West Ham.
There was a few before Christmas.
Drew 0-0 with West Ham to go top of the league, and I remember
everyone booed. Yeah. Well, not everyone, but
it was a frustrating one. Now, do you remember much of that season?
Broadly speaking, not a great deal, to be honest, just because of my age. But I mean, the big moments, certainly the Real Madrid, the United, those sorts of fixtures, I certainly remember those. And it was one of the first seasons that I do remember sort of the majority of, to be honest. But certainly prime Torres.
Real Madrid weren't much good, but that was one hell of a win, wasn't it? Just to take them out in the way that they did. And Torres, I don't think I've ever seen a player in a game so aggressive as he went into that game.
I think
he just had the point to prove, although it was the most bang-on foul for the opening goal.
It was, but in the first 5 minutes he produced one of the greatest almost goals Liverpool have ever scored. The turn through his legs, possibly on Pepe, straight through on Casillas, and Casillas somehow just got the inside of his calf to it and put it wide. But it was one of those great, and this is one of the kind of key aspects, I think, of a lot of the great European nights in recent years. Liverpool started fast, whether it's an early chance or an early corner, and it just ignites the crowd. And it was a fantastic 2 legs, because the first game over there was actually the first game I ever covered from a press box from the Echo, the Benayoun header. So it was a very, very memorable tie for me personally. And you just felt this, the other kind of, and just to show kind of what a basket case of the way the club was. On the afternoon of that first leg when we were in Madrid, getting all the pre-match atmosphere, suddenly all these rumours emerged from Liverpool that Benitez was on the brink of the sack.
Oh yeah, of
even
course,
though Liverpool were kind of in the last 16 of the Champions League fighting for the title. And I remember getting dispatched to do a load of vox pops round fans around the ground going, have you heard this about Benitez? And it was such a season of kind of contrasts where, on the pitch, Liverpool were, Gerrard and Torres at their peak, strong team with like Hippier and Mascherano and Reina in goal. And yet off the field, things were rapidly starting to unravel. And it's so frustrating because, the following season, Rafa wasn't really able to bring in the players he wanted. Everything kind of really did start to fall apart. And you're always left with that feeling about Benitez's reign. If the owners had been the kind of owners they pitched themselves at when they arrived, would Rafa have been the man that ended that long wait for a title? We'll never know.
Yeah, okay, well, another almost. 6 years ago today, I can't believe it's been 6 years since this as well, Liverpool went to Old Trafford again. They won 3-0. And that was one of the easiest games I think I've seen Liverpool play anywhere, never mind Old Trafford. They just walked.
That performance was one of the best I've ever seen, and I always loved that Brendan Rodgers team. I loved the second half of that season in particular, and I think this was probably the height of it, wasn't it? Luis Suarez absolutely terrorised them that day. Should have been about 6-7-0, really should have. Sturridge missed a big chance, I think. Suarez was denied with a great save from there.
Gerrard missed the pen.
Gerrard missed the pen.
Scored two, but missed one.
Hit the post, didn't he?
Yeah.
Just went there and absolutely beat them out of sight, and that was just an incredible day. And it was obviously United were falling apart with David Moyes about a month away before he got sacked, but Liverpool that day was just incredible, and Suarez in particular, what a performance.
Dan, David Moyes, football genius.
That was the chance. I was in the away end again. That was the chant from the away end. One thing I remember particularly about that day, which I actually went to with our good pal Sean, who had a spare ticket that day, and we bumped into some wild character by Anfield, in some cafe by Anfield at like 9 o'clock in the morning, and he ended up being right by us in the away end, ironically enough, when we got onto the ground. But what I remember more than anything else, particularly about that day, was when the third goal went in. And we've been on a fantastic run. I think, I know it was 11 straight wins before that Chelsea game. So it was maybe 6 or 7 straight wins on the bounce at that point. And people had been starting to talk about, it could be with an outside chance of the title here. When that third goal went in, I remember kind of getting a bit emotional, thinking, wow, this is actually really happening. This really, genuinely, legitimately could happen. And it should have done.
Yep,
but it didn't.
You a bit older then?
Yes,
I can you remember that one?
I do remember that.
Yeah.
You will be pleased to remember to know. Yeah, what an incredible season that was, and that was one of the moments of that season. I think the way that Liverpool won that game, as Gorst said, it was just you turned up knowing. I think that Liverpool probably were going to win. The way that they did it though was the way that really sort of changed things, and as Dan said, in the away end, people knew, people watched on television like myself. It just felt like such a huge moment, and it's one of those games that whenever Liverpool play Manchester United now in future, there's always going to be people talking about, do you remember when that happened? And that just goes to show, how big of an occasion it was.
Okay, another significant on this day. Gorst and I would have been 10, 11 years away. Matt, you weren't even thought of yet. Dan, you were about
cruising for bruising you. In actual fact,
about 25, 30.
I was about.
I'm not even sure what one this is.
About 10 weeks, about 2 months before I was born. You're talking March '77.
This was the most famous.
Yeah.
Do you think that probably not after Barcelona, but I still think that this is the most famous European night in terms of for my age. It was something you heard about from your dad, and anyone else, I think.
Super Sub strikes again.
Saint Etienne, 1977, the European Cup quarter-final second leg. Liverpool lost the first leg in France 1-0. Saint Etienne, I think, had been to the final the previous year, lost to Bayern Munich at Hampden Park, and they were very much felt to be the best team in Europe. One of the first away European crowds to really travel to Anfield as well. There were lots of French in the ground singing Allez le Vert, which is Come On You Greens for the uninitiated. And Liverpool got off to the perfect start. Kevin Keegan clipped a corner, went straight in after 2 minutes. I think Liverpool were already won the league in 76, and we're on course to retaining it that year in 77. But early in the second half, Bart and he of the sweaty armpits, if you've ever seen the video footage, slammed one in from about 35 yards at the Anfield Road end. And obviously with away goals, that meant that Liverpool needed 2. But Ray Kennedy pulled one back straight away. And then the iconic super sub, David Fairclough, the bionic carrot, as he was also sometimes known because of his red hair, got on with about, I think in the last 10 minutes or so, got on the end to a long, hopeful ball from Ray Kennedy and slotted beneath the cop. And the pictures, the videos of that night, whether you're my age, your age, or our granddad's ages, remain among the most iconic in Anfield history, because that was the seed once we went on to win it in Rome 2 months later, everybody knew, well, it wouldn't have happened without that Saint Etienne moment. And I always kind of think Gerrard's goal against Olympiacos in 2005 was almost like the equivalent of it. You only really appreciate the true value of it once the end goal has been reached, which obviously it was, not it?
Of course, but don't you think that seed, that Liverpool's still feeling the benefits years and years later of a moment like that, because the Anfield crowd, I remember going to Chelsea in 2005 and people were talking about then, this is the power that Anfield can have.
100%. And just to give you a couple of brief little examples, outside the Wanda Metropolitano 3 or 4 weeks ago before the first leg in Madrid, we were there quite early and went to do the stadium tour, and we just got chatting to some French fella in the queue who just happened to be in Spain at the time, was near the ground, and basically had watched that game back in 1977, and Liverpool had always made an imprint on his mind. About 10 years before, I was on a press trip to the south of France, and even the guy looking after us was a big Marseille fan. He said, I've always loved Liverpool ever since Saint Etienne. I'd love to take my son to Anfield one day. And he did. We kept in touch, and he came over about a year afterwards, and I sorted him tickets for a game. And that just two little examples about how that, amongst probably a fair few very special Anfield nights, have that kind of resonance that goes way beyond Liverpool.
Brilliant. We'll finish off. Tomorrow is St Patrick's Day, so have a good day to all of our Irish listeners, which I know there's many of you.
Yep.
And Matt, you tell me there's quite a significant on this day presence tomorrow for Klopp especially.
Yeah, 3 games that Liverpool have played on the 17th of March under Jurgen Klopp. The first one being the 1-1 draw in the Europa League against Manchester United, the famous Coutinho chip over David De Gea's head.
I was in the way in that night with you, yeah, and that was
were you?
Well, I was just below you, but I was there. And
can we talk about the no, we probably can't talk about the funniest moment.
No,
that night, no. Carry on.
I don't know what you mean, but that was one of the best goals I've celebrated.
It was class
in any end of
and one of the best half times ever.
Just because it was right on the stroke of half time, and then you knew you were through, and Old Trafford just completely, just the life was sucked out of it. And that's always good. Sorry, Matt.
Yeah, just on that half time. I mean, some of the videos and stuff from that just looks unbelievably unbelievable. But a couple of other games as well. The 5-0 or one of the 5-0 victories over Watford, where Mohamed Salah scored 4 and assisted the other one for Roberto Firmino, was also on that day. And last year, the late win over Fulham to keep Liverpool in the title race, just going into the international break. So I think Sadio Mane had put Liverpool in front. Ryan Babel then drew it back to 1-1, and then
horrific Alisson Van Dijk error.
A rare error from the pair of them, and then James Milner gets them off the hook with the penalty late on. So I think certainly 3 big games, you could say, under Jurgen Klopp, and there will be a piece on the Liverpool Echo website tomorrow about that.
Klopp got the look of the Irish on his side.
He did. We'll definitely be writing about all 3 of them tomorrow as we try and navigate this break. Right, well, all the best to everyone at home. I hope you're keeping well. Make sure you look after yourselves. Wash your hands is the message.
Stay safe.
Sing happy birthday.
Sing happy birthday.
Or sing You Never Walk Alone.
Yeah. Sing You Never Walk Alone. Wash your hands and have a great St Patrick's Day wherever you are, and especially to our listeners in Ireland. Take it easy. Cheers.